Excuse me, everyone. The February 18th, 2020 Zoning Board of Appeals meeting will come to order. Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Wood?
Present.
Mr. DeSono? Absent. Mrs. Curley? Present. Mr. Callen?
Present.
Mr. Cole?
Present. Seeing we have a quorum, we'll proceed. Can I have a motion on the floor to accept the minutes of the February 4th, 2020 meeting? Is there a motion to accept?
Yes.
There is a motion to accept. A second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? So moved. First order of business tonight is going to be a discussion on the proposed ZBA fee structure by Michael Donovan, the Chief of Inspection Services, Building Commissioner. Mike, thank you for coming tonight, and like to hear just briefly what some of your ideas were on this. I think everybody's had a chance to look at them. Have you?
No.
Yes, sir.
I'll give you
Good evening, board members. The CFO of the city has asked all the boards and departments in the city to reevaluate their fees, do surveys of surrounding communities and/or like communities, and derive new fee schedules. So we've done that in inspectional services for our fees. I've sent a similar fee schedule to the planning board for them to consider, and I sent a correspondence with the fee survey to this board a while ago. Since that time, I've been asked to make recommendations on fees, and then so I'm here tonight to do that. The first thing I did when we examined the fees of other communities was to try to look back in the history of us processing applications for people and determining what variance or what people were asking from the board, and how best to put that in a fee that was easily understandable by both the applicant, the board, and the clerical people that are processing the appeal. The other thing looked at was to look at uses or petitions that come forward that this board hears, and whether they have a fee for that in other communities. And in some cases, we found we didn't have a fee here, like the use variance, for example.
Yeah.
The board routinely gives use variances, but they don't have a specific fee for that. We look at the table and we try to fit something in that fits. And then looking at other communities and how they valued their relative scale of fees, and trying to adjust Lynn's to fit the relative value difference on any petition being requested. To that end, looking at the fees that Lynn has right now, for instance, you have 1 to 3 family residential and then all others. One of the first recommendations of having is in line with other communities and the building code and other codes. 1 and 2 families are separate from 3 families and above. 3 families and above are commercial properties. Even if it's owner occupied, it's still an apartment building. It falls into a whole different building code. Right. It's not a 1 and 2 family. So in my estimation, it has a different level of consideration, a higher level of consideration reviewing codes. And as such, in my mind, that would be the same for this board. Putting a denser building on a lot has different potential outcomes from parking, from the use, from tenancy to, is it long-term 1 or 2 family, maybe longer than a 3 family? We have rental units or a 4 family. So I tried to group them in accordance with the building code, in accordance with how, frankly, my inspectors think when they review an application and look, say, can we issue this permit? Can we not issue this permit? The advertising fee, that was set based upon what we have now. It covers in the whole. Some ads may cost more than $150, others cost less, but at the end of the year, the $150 covers without much excess to the city, all the ads. We try to combine everything in one ad so that the verbiage at the top and bottom are the same versus running a separate ad for every single petition. The city's done that for many, many decades. Then I looked at our fee schedule here for variances. For instance, we have setback and lot area. And what I said, well, those are dimensional variances. And they receive the same consideration and have the same effect upon the neighbors. You're allowing something to get out of the allowed by right footprint and to encroach upon the neighbors, and it has the same level of consideration for the board, whether you're encroaching on the left side setback, the frontage, or the area. I mean, so I lumped all the dimensional variances together and then put a proposed fee on that, which is a little higher than we have right now to reflect surrounding communities.
It's also higher than all the others, or except for Lawrence?
It is. It is. Except for Lawrence. Our fee right now is $150, for instance, for a setback, and $300 for lot area. I don't know why, these fees have been around for a long time.
Mike, I just have a quick question for you is whether looking at the building code is really the best way of doing this based on, the residents' burden in terms of cost. Perfect example, we just approved a one-bedroom studio on Mount Vernon. Compare that lot and the owner of that building to owner occupied on Phillip Ave. We approved it, a one-bedroom studio in the basement as well. Charging both the same because they're both three-bed multi-family. I'm thinking it might be a little much if we're looking at building code to come up with the cost for this, because it's the three-family, anything above three families is multi, I understand, but Mount Vernon is over, I'll say 30, 40 apartments in there.
Yep.
This unit is on Phillip Ave, three-family, one occupies the same family, lives in 3 units, including the basement, like a game room, I believe. Charging both property exactly the same.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, the relative value of an apartment in Lynn, it would be based on apartment condo, the same thing, forms of ownership really don't matter. It's based upon its location in the neighborhood, and they're relatively the same. Unless you're going into a new high-rise or something, the value of an apartment on Phillips Ave, in my estimation, isn't much different than on Mount Vernon. And the decisions the board made stay forever with the property. Whether the owner's living there today, he could sell it tomorrow to somebody else. Now it's a three-family building, it's an apartment, it's commercial property. You're adding a unit to a building. You're giving that building value. Essentially you're putting money into the owner's pocket by adding something that he didn't have before. Something that, because he's here or she is here in front of this board, is not even allowed in that district. So you're going above and beyond, and the fee for the city going above and beyond and giving somebody special permission to do what nobody else in this district can do should be taken into consideration by the board, by the city, because it's irrevocable. It's going to be there. And that's why the fees are set. And I understand what you're saying in regards to the 1, 2 versus the 3, but the fact of the matter is that 3 is a multi-family, and a 1 and 2 is a 1 and 2. And the 1 and 2s are allowed in all districts, almost all districts, I should say, residential districts, but a 3-family is not allowed in all districts. So that was my rationale. Keep in mind, these are recommendations. The board is free to do what they feel. It's their vote. It's there. You can add things, you can change them. This was just a recommendation based upon, I was asked to give based upon my knowledge of the survey and what I've seen in my office.
It would be nice to get the percentage of how many did 1 to 3 family, how many did, so at least you could inform us if this is a high volume for them.
Well, we can do that. We can research the records in our community. To do so in other communities, take a Freedom of Information Act request.
Yeah, that'd be nice to
Be a
see
long
that
time before
percentage,
they
and we can
respond.
see where people are spending, just so that as we're talking about it, if it's affordable or not affordable.
Right, because if
It'd
the
be
guy
nice to-
comes in here, he wants to add a windows in the basement for a game room, but then it pushes a zoning board application. He's only trying, he's probably, the window's probably like, let's just say $120, right? You run one on Western Ave. But now we're telling him that he has to pay, and you have to be serious to come in front of us. So it'll be like how much? 100. Well, it'll be 150 to advertise, right? Plus whatever it is, whether it's 400, 250, compared to someone who can't afford that, who own multiple buildings in the same vicinity.
Yes, sir, I understand that, but the zone ordinance was written by the Lynn City Council and approved by the mayor. And it was done so in regards to the benefit of the entire city,
Correct.
not an individual. So when these rules were set down that said that you could not have living space in the basement of an apartment building, it was done for a rationale that the council thought was fit for the city. So for somebody to even come in here to the zoning board of appeals and ask, we don't get many of these, by the way, they're very few and far between.
And
this particular.
This example wasn't a living space, it
Right.
was like a game room, I think it was.
It may have been, my recollection is not that good. But they're asking to do something that they're not allowed to do.
Yes.
Regardless of the cost of what it takes to do it, they're not allowed to do it. So asking for a variance to do something is a very serious matter. And the cost of it to the owner should be immaterial. It's what is the cost to the city of allowing, if we allowed every 3 family in the city to have dwelling space in the basement. Because you have to put a condition on it, and it have to be very clear in that condition that it can only be used for a game room. What's a game room? Can people sleep on the couch in a game room? Or is it now more bedroom space because the window they put in meets the code, and they can argue, blah, 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 that it fits the building code, you can't throw me out of here now, I'm sleeping in my basement. But they're really not sleeping in the basement, they're sleeping in the basement of an apartment building. So, I understand what you're saying about affordability, but when it comes to the city granting variances, whether use variances or dimensional variances, in my opinion, from everything I've read, the cost to the owner really is not an issue, it's what the cost is to the community. And for somebody to argue that it's going to cost me $300 to put the windows in and $500 to fee, well, I think they're barking up the wrong tree because they're giving special permission to do something that they can't do by right.
Plus the value of the property goes up.
Value of the property.
Right.
And that's what I want the board to understand is when you give somebody this permission, it stays with the property. A lot of times we see people who get a variance and they won't actually do the work themselves. They'll just sell the property to somebody else because it's easy for them to do it. You're adding value to property in the city, and I think what the cost is to the city is more important than what the cost is to the individual who wants it. That's just my opinion and what I've seen.
Thanks.
Administrative appeal, set at $250. We don't have a fee for that at this point in time.
Yeah, that was me.
Non-conforming structure use. In other words, the expansion, alteration, or change of a non-conforming structure. It should have been a slash between structure and use. I apologize for the typo. Or use. Has a fee. We have it and we don't have it. There's a non-conforming building use, and that fee stayed the same. And it's been increased on the commercial side. Takes much more deliberation and thought on the board on an expansion of a commercial property or structure, in my opinion, and that's why I doubled the fee for all others versus 1 and 2.
So this one is for commercial?
It's for both.
For both.
Yeah. The Section 9 off-street parking, I looked at what the board currently has now, and went up a little bit. It set a minimum fee essentially, and then It's $50 a space now, and I'm saying it's $100 plus $100 a space. Parking, off-street parking is the largest complaint that this office, my office receives in the city, because people aren't parking in the right spot. It's almost impossible for us to get in there and enforce it because the cars have to be there when we get there. But when a project is proposed that does not meet minimum requirements, meets the minimum requirements and you're looking for other variances, fine. But the off-street parking is a large issue in regards to adding value to a property. So the recommendations are as they are $100 plus $100 per space, 1 and 2, and $500 plus $250 per space for all others. Please jump in anytime. I'm just going.
Yeah, go right ahead. Keep going.
Do you think that if we charge more, people will just park on the street and try to develop parking off street? Because some of the things that I've noticed that the zoning board are doing today is if someone is going from a 2 to 3 and they don't have the required parking, their project probably will not succeed.
I would gladly say to this board, planning board, any board, that if a project doesn't have parking, it really shouldn't be built in this city or any city. Some of our zones don't require parking, or they have reduced numbers of parking. But the council put in place these numbers for different areas based after their deliberations and for a reason. They haven't changed the numbers in most of the zones, only in the more commercial zones, the waterfront zones, the downtown areas. And parking is always a problem. So it's, frankly, if somebody wants to add 1 space or 2 spaces, $100 plus $100 a space, given the value you're adding to the property, it's not something much to ask.
The value to the person living to be able to park off-street is a great value, so.
Correct.
Yeah, it's not that much.
Use variance, this is to have a use that's not allowed in the district. If somebody wants to build a 3-family house in the R1 district, that would place that at 1,000. And if somebody wants to build, say, a 2-family, or use the property in a residential, just 1 or 2, have it set at 500. Use variances change the value of properties immensely.
Oh, yeah.
Allowing somebody to do something at a location that nobody else can gives them a value that is above and beyond what is measured with these fees. And then subdivision of lots, additional dwelling units. I want to make sure people understand that my language here probably wasn't the best with the word subdivision. It should have said just division of a lot. For example, if somebody comes with a 19,000 square foot lot, wants to cut an existing house on it, extra area, wants to cut it to 10,000 and then a 9,000, and they're adding a dwelling. For 1 and 2 families, I'm proposing 1,500. For all others, 5,000 per lot, per dwelling. Additional units are highly impactful, if that's a word, pardon my English, upon a neighborhood. We have areas where there's 2 houses on a lot. Somebody comes in, they want to put 4 units on the lot, et cetera, et cetera. It adds to the density, and it adds to the burden on the neighborhood that wasn't there before. So this is my recommendations.
Are we afraid that the last one, someone can divide the lot so that they don't pay the 5 grand, so they only fall on the 1 or 2 per lot? Is that possible? So I can come in and say, I'll split this lot by 4, just so I don't pay the 5 grand each.
No, if they're coming to the zoning board of appeals to subdivide a lot, to create a lot, because you can subdivide a lot that's not in conformance with the zone ordinance, break off a piece and give it to your neighbor. As long as you're not making the lot more non-conforming, you can attach that piece to their lot, increase their lot size, decrease your lot size, as long as you're not creating a lot that's not allowed by right. Then they have to come here. Now, that subdivision where your neighbor's trading 2 pieces would not be creating another dwelling unit lot. I'm talking about, and to clarify this, possibly a buildable lot where not only asking to subdivide the lot, but they're asking permission to construct a dwelling or a building on a lot with less than the required square footages. So you're giving them permission to do something that they couldn't do before. This is not meant to neighbors trying to correct the fence was in the wrong spot or the pool's approaching any yard. I would be looking at a dimensional variance on that where they're changing their setbacks and they're changing the areas by this transaction, but they're not creating a new dwelling unit in the process.
Yeah.
And they don't have the potential to create a new dwelling unit by saying, oh, I just want to do this now, but I'll be back later and try it. So at either way, even if they came in with the dwelling unit later, it would still be the same thing because you're adding a dwelling unit where there was none before.
Mike, appreciate your work on this and your explanation on and the reason behind it. I know at one time, years ago, some were up basically because people were just speculating.
Mm-hmm.
They were just, you know, coming in here for 100, 150 bucks and they take a shot, and if they got lucky, they hit the lottery. And he said, we go from a 2 to a 3, we're adding $80,000 value, minimum to that house.
And a lot of congestion to the neighborhood.
And congestion to the neighborhood, which we have been dealing with, I think, pretty effectively. But yeah, I personally think I don't see that. Have you run these by Mr. Bettino?
He was copied on this correspondence. He has not commented on the fees. He has not really commented on any of the fees that have been proposed. He's let each department head work out their own departments. I can get the numbers to you from last fiscal year, the variances, the petitions that came in, what they were for, and the fee they paid. I don't know how much guidance that will give you because year to year, when they say prior year's performance, does not project future year's performance. So we could have seen 2 or 3 last year that you would not see from the same year.
How far back do you think you can go?
How far back? How much time do we want to spend?
Well, no, back forever. No, like 5 years.
Yeah, in our, we should be able to go back. There's 2 years in our system. I have to check to see if the rest of the records computerized, or we have to go. We only recently started computerizing the records of the zoning board of appeals and the planning board and into the permit systems that we have. So we'll go back as far as we have it electronically. Otherwise, we have to go to boxes in the basement and start pulling petitions.
So, any other questions?
I have no question. There's a motion or not?
There's no other questions. Yeah, I'll accept the motion.
A motion to accept the fees as presented by Mr. Donovan.
I'll second it.
All right, a motion is made by Mr. Callen and second by Mr. Wood. Roll call on the members, the original members.
Mr. Wood?
Yes.
Mrs. Curley?
Yes.
Mr. Callen?
Yes.
Mr. Cole?
Yes.
Thank you, Mike.
I don't know whether it is a period or how would, you know, how, is there a waiting period or?
If the board wants me to wait a certain amount of time, you can just condition that vote upon it. Otherwise,
No, I don't think so. No conditions, no.
I'll put a sign up tomorrow.
Thank you. Thanks for your work on this.
Appreciate it.
We appreciate it. Next order of business is case number 9925, 243, 245 Parkin Avenue. And we have a request. We do. Hopefully we're gonna continue it. There was a call, not a call, it was an email to Mary that Mr. Brienzi has been hard at work trying to revise the plans for this project. He is waiting for the excavator to flatten the lot, which we had requested. Thereafter, Ralph Reed will stake out the project. We have hired a new architect and are on our 3rd round of drawings with a 3-unit project. Please forward the waiver form to continue the hearing until March 17th so we can stake out the project and provide the board members with adequate time to perform their site visit. Thank you for your consideration. Please let me know if you still need to be present on the February 18th to continue the hearing. So does anybody have any problems with continuing this to March? It's basically they're doing everything that we had asked them to do. So can we make a motion to continue this case?
I move to continue the case till March 17th.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? I don't think we need a roll call vote on this. Okay, so we're gonna get ready to go back out to Parkland Avenue, and we'll take it up on St. Patrick's Day.
This is after the drawings.
Yeah, we're gonna get the drawings ahead of time. So that's,
It'll be staked out, you think?
it'll
by
be
then?
staked out, and yeah, we'll have the drawings ahead of time. Okay, so that has been continued. Next order of business is 77 Broad Street. Petition to Hubert Park by his attorney, Stanley Vitale, to permit alterations to a pre-existing non-conforming dentist's office in the R5 apartment district to allow construction of a handicap access ramp and an addition with less than the required parking spaces and dimensions, finding that such alterations are not substantially more detrimental in effect on the neighborhood. Okay, we have a new set of plans.
Yes. The chairman's correct, if you recall. We've been here at least 2 times before, and maybe 3. This is the 3rd. We've received input, which we took seriously from abutters and from members of the board. Hopefully John has sharpened his pencil and can explain. And I will say to you that I asked him to explain because I had a problem most people do, which is looking at a one-dimensional drawing and trying to visualize. So he's brought a series of the boards, but essentially, as I understand it, and concisely, is that we understood that there was a concern about the size of the addition, so the addition size has been reduced. We understood there was a concern about the sideline, which met the minimum requirement of 7.5, but by reducing the size of the building, that sideline on the right is now 12.5 feet. We understood there was a concern about the view from the adjoining properties, and so we show a line of arborvitae's that ultimately, these were 2 or 3, you won't be able to see that side. I think, for me, more helpful than the drawings were the photographs, which John not only superimposed with respect to the improvements, but identified for a person like me about the wrought iron fence and capstone wall. And to me, the largest singular change is in the ramp. That the ramp starts with the stairs were on the left-hand side, but as it comes to the shortened now front side, it comes back 5 feet and in. So the ramp, understanding that we're bound by the regulations of the Architectural Barriers Board as to the dimensions of the ramp, and that we're all bound by the state zoning law, which says that handicapped accessible ramps you can't look with disfavor upon. And the question was enclosing it in a satisfactory manner for 2 reasons. One was the concern about the elements, and the other was how it looked from the street. I don't know whether John brought blow-ups of the photographs, but I know that we provided each of you with a set of the photographs and the drawings.
Mr. Vitale,
Yes,
I've got a plan, but I can't read it, it's too small.
that's why I asked whether he brought them.
Yeah, Sam, this is a good segue probably, so I can walk you guys through the...
So this is John Harden, who was here before, who drafted...
Can I ask him a question about
Sure.
that plan?
Oh, yeah.
Because I'm very concerned about that. Did you make a plan to enclose it and blend it well with the building that's there?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And do you show it on that?
I will in a moment. Let me walk you through the changes.
No, why don't we show him what he wants?
Presentation.
Because I had difficulty reading the plans myself.
So this
our eyes.
view is probably the most accurate or the easiest for you guys to see what the biggest change was. So this entire facade, right, was pushed back 5 feet as was requested by the board. The problem in doing that, of course, was to try and figure out how to make the ramp work in less space. So we studied it, we looked at it, and we figured that we could actually do it by turning the ramp inside, right? So we gave up space to do that. We gave up about 5 feet, 2.5 inches,
given the width of the ramp and handrails and so on, as well as the space of the landing, which of course adds some room. But it actually has some advantages aesthetically, and also I think it has some advantages for the ramp itself. So the ramp is now deeper than it was. In other words, it's under a deeper overhang by over 5 feet. So it creates an area where snow and rain will not get to it. So it's a much safer condition for that top part of the ramp.
But I'm saying, are you enclosing it?
It is not fully enclosed.
That's what I want to know.
It
I
is not
can't
fully
support it
enclosed.
unless you fully enclose it. Because why don't you want to fully enclose it, blended with the building that's there? I don't understand.
In our opinion, it blends better with it looking like a porch.
Well, I know, but for safety's sake, I'm talking about. When it drives in rain, the snow drives in horizontal, what stops it? That's what I'm trying to tell you.
It's deeper in a building
I've worked
now.
at hundreds of these over the years.
Yeah, it's
And
further
unless
in.
they're completely enclosed, they're not.
Well, I think we had to balance the concerns of people who didn't want it to look like a commercial structure.
Well, I want it to blend well with the building that's there.
In our opinion, I think it blends better as if it were to look like a porch than if it were to look fully enclosed.
Yeah.
And we have other issues that if it is fully enclosed, we must count it as interior space and the foundation and so on. So in all due respect, I don't think I can do that. I think
Wait a minute, why can't you say that again?
It becomes another variance. I mean,
Wait a minute.
The interior space.
it becomes interior space if it's enclosed.
Right.
So by covering it with a roof, I think we're achieving a nice balance where it's protected from the rain, it's protected from the snow, and now it's even more protected because it's even further back.
What are you talking about the foundation? You have to put a foundation for anything like that.
True, but in terms of
I don't
the,
understand, I've done a lot of this design too. And I can tell you right now, they don't work unless they're fully enclosed. So I can't support it if it's not fully. It could be 90% enclosed, it's not right. There is a way, you're a designer.
yes,
You
I
can work
could
wonders,
certainly.
you can work wonders with, plug it in so it blends well with the building, so that no one can pick it out and say, that's the opening where the birds fly in, or something like that. There's always a comeback that later on, people say that should have been closed up.
What we tried to do, as I explained, is we understood there were neighbors whose concerns were that they wanted it to look like a residence. We understood the concern about the elements, and we're dealing with restrictions that are not of our making, or your making, but of the state's with respect to what has to be in terms of the grade of the ramp, the length of the ramp. So we put those into a formula, and we thought we came up with what's addressed each of those concerns. We satisfy the state regulations. We believe it looks more like a residence than commercial. And because we pushed it further back and brought the roof out, we think it's enclosed and covered. And I think we had this discussion in maybe another case, but projecting eaves and roofs don't count on your front setback, and it's specifically exempted in the zone ordinance. In terms of, can it be enclosed? Yeah. The question is balancing what is gained from that versus what the impact will be, the visually, or what the impact will be construction-wise, and trying to strike a balance. And I think what John tried to do, not only with the ramp, but with a capstone wall, with a wrought iron fence, with the arborvitaes, was to address the concerns that were expressed by the members of the board and by others. So this photograph shows it from that perspective. This also shows, maybe you ought to explain this portion right here.
Sure. Yeah, so what this is showing is also shown here in the plan. We've increased the area of green space by 5 feet. We've lost about 150 square feet in the new portion of the building. We've also lost 2 treatment rooms, which is a significant amount of room and chairs for Dr. Park. But we've been able to maintain the rest of the program in this space. It was suggested in the last meeting that we could use some of the rear setback in order to do that. So in a way, we gave up some space here and gained some space at the back, but in total, we lost about 150 square feet across.
How many feet in total in the addition?
So the proposed building here is, I think it's about 1,400 square feet if you take the new plus the existing. That total footprint is 3,450.
Then there was another photograph, John, that I had a question about,
Yep.
which was the one where you showed the perspective. These are the ones that I questioned. So maybe you could go through these.
Sure. So this is the view of the front of the building. As you can see,
This is
the
existing.
existing is above and the proposed is below. So this is where you can see the change of making the building 5 feet less wide. So it's increased the area of the bushes over here on this side. You can see the deeper shadow line in there where the porch is now going deeper into the building. We still enter at the same point, which is great from an accessibility point of view. That's exactly what you want. The ramp goes up, gets to a flat landing, and then turns back a little bit and comes up to the door right about there to get entry inside.
And then let's go through where these would be.
Sure. And these are just showing the improvements such as the cable rail, which is shown here as if it were a porch. The 30 inches worth of stone, which is the face of that ramp. So in essence, you really can't see the ramp at all from the street. It's all sort of hidden behind. And then, of course, the post, which would sit on top of that wall. So the whole thing with the posts and the roof edge and the cable rail and the stone wall in front is a really elegant solution, I think, to hide that ramp and make it look like something much nicer than a handicapped ramp, which I think was the primary concern from the neighbors when we had our first meeting.
I really feel like it gives you a home feeling as opposed to a commercial property.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then there's this image is showing the black fence, which we had talked to the neighbors about, which is illustrated on the site plan. I'm sorry. So that fence runs along the entire edge of the property. So I think this will also be quite nice because it will be a nice looking black fence with the bushes on the inside of it. So they'll probably grow through the fence a little bit, but it will keep a nice sharp edge to that property line while still having the bushes, which will give it green, of course, and some life, and also some shielding of view from both sides.
So you gave up 5 feet going down the side, but you took some of the back.
Correct.
Can I see the original that you had last week in comparison to that?
The original plan?
Yeah, he had a
Yeah,
board
so
like that last week.
I don't have it, but this red dashed line,
Yeah, but that doesn't
I
help
can show
me.
you right there.
That doesn't help
See
me.
what's in yellow? That was his original plan.
The red line, I think.
yeah, the
You probably can't see it.
red line is the
Yeah, no,
exact footprint.
I have it marked on with magic marker on that.
So what does this mean?
This was his original plan.
The original photograph.
You can see it up there, but
Why
this
don't
is
you bring it
easy.
over
I
here?
highlighted it. That's the original plan, so
Mrs.
this is
Curl.
what they added. This is what they, and that's what they took out. See,
This red line indicates where the extent of the footprint was before.
So how does this affect the people that live in the back of that?
So this had a 15-foot setback. Previously, we're now at about 7'6". We're still able to do some plantings back here, such as a good-sized tree. We could certainly run some of the bushes back behind that as well.
We have open space to the,
Yeah, it's a parking.
Yeah, this
Yeah,
is all
what I'm
planned
saying.
back there. Yeah, that's right.
at the rear. And I think there was a kind of a shed or something. What did he remove? There was a, I thought there was a portion that came out.
Oh, there's a piece here to this building, which will be taken
Right,
away.
so that's being removed.
Mr. Vitale, I think it was the opening of the hearing, you were talking about the lot, it was, this lot that with the additions going was purchased by,
The lot grew over the years.
yeah, what was on this lot at one time?
There was a three-family dwelling. The numbers have changed. It used to be like 75, 73, now there's like 81, 80. The numbering changed. But to get to these properties, that's why there were the right-of-ways. There were always homes at the back.
Yeah.
But this lot was originally, I think, 4,000, and this was a registered land plan at 4,000, and what was acquired was another 2,600. The deed, I think what you have shows the number of parcels that make up the total lot. But they weren't all acquired at the same time. They were acquired over a period of time, which increased the size of the lot.
But there was a three-family on that lot.
There was a tenement. I think it calls it a tenement.
How long ago was that?
Excuse me?
How long ago was that?
I'd have to look at the deeds and the plans, but I can tell you that it was back before, after the person came in to try to increase the number of residential units. They then acquired more land. But in the deed, it lists the three parcels and it lists the dates of which they were acquired, of which now two parcels are this and one parcel is gone. So if you look at the original footprints of these lots, essentially what happened is it grew from 4,700 and it added another 3,000 at the rear. And that was a 2.5-story building. It was then numbered 73. Now I think it's numbered 75 on Mr. Faye's plan. But this is a plan back in 1953.
Yeah, it's got to be more than 40 years ago.
Well, originally, that's what it was in 53. That's no longer the case. This is now part of all of that.
I'm just curious.
The land was made up of what's called registered land and recorded in terms of the title. But the deed which we submitted, I think, listed three parcels. I think it was the predecessors to Dr. Hubert that acquired the other parcel.
Okay.
Well, I want the dentist to be able to have something. I'm equally as concerned as with the people who live there, who came from South Boston and other places to buy a home to live here.
I understand that, but the requirement is that we have a 15-foot rear yard and we have it, so. If we weren't meeting the minimums for rear yard, I would have asked for it. We meet the minimum for rear yard because we bought the property at the back some years ago. And now we're utilizing it for a different purpose. But the lot's actually grown. It hasn't been the same size lot from when the dentist office went there in 1933.
I understand that. I know what you're saying.
And the choices are, and remember, a predecessor came in, I don't know, it certainly wasn't Dr. Park, to increase the number of residential units, and the board said no. So he's got a property that's taxed for mixed use. It's taxed as a residence and a commercial use to this day. It has a classification of an office, professional office, and an apartment above. And what we said as a proposal, which we think made most sense, was since they couldn't increase the residential portion, that they take that out and use it for purposes related to the office space and free up some of the space downstairs. And that we think is a good trade-off in terms of how to best use the site. The site has been mixed use since, I'd say, 1933. And in I had the dates in here, when it came before the Board of Appeals. And at that time, the then owners wanted to add apartments, and the board said no.
Well, perhaps he should have been an owner under option to see what he could do with the property before he bought it.
I understand that, but hindsight's 20/20 all the time. The fact of the matter is that the history of this property has been mixed use since at least 1933. And that now the dentists who were there have retired, the last one. and I would say the world of dentistry has changed. And what we're trying to do is adapt to the nature of the people being served in the city of Lynn by the dentist, and to adapt to the requirements of the Architectural Barriers Board, and try to satisfy the neighbors, and at the same time be functional, have it work. And he explained to you the difference in the kinds of clienteles that he has, which essentially are children on one hand and disabled on the other. And in trying to make that balance, we worked at several plans, as I think the doctor told you. We then came back in response to the neighbors' concerns and the board's concerns, and we think we made some improvements and certainly certain concessions. But at the end of the day, the functionality of the building has always been as a professional office for a dentist. And we want to retain it. We want to provide service to the people of Lynn who don't go to the North Shore Mall or somewhere else, even down to the Linway, and can walk to, as we pointed out. We did an analysis of the zip codes of where the patients are from, many of whom live within 15 minutes of the site, walk there, could take a bike there. Doctor's a big fan of using a bicycle. But it's a neighborhood dentist office.
So, Mr. Chairman.
Sure.
So I'm trying to understand, Dr. Park, you had, to me, it's a pretty good sized practice anyways. I mean, I go to my dentist who's just a few blocks from there, and he uses he's got 2 working rooms. And, so I don't get the part about expanding the practice because dentistry is changing.
No. I said the character of this dentistry office is pediatric and people with physical and mental handicap.
Right, and so they've been serving them in this practice in the space they had for quite a while.
They were basically pediatric, I believe. The doctor can speak to
I
that.
think there was one session where they were trying to separate the 2 populations. You don't want to mix adults.
So he's expanding the operation.
No, you're trying to not.
It
wasn't convenient.
There's a very important part to this, which I don't think has been captured completely. The kind of clientele that Dr. Park serves are young kids and also people with other challenges.
Yeah.
Maybe they're handicapped and they're in a chair, or they've
Emotional or physical handicap.
Exactly. So if you, I'm not sure if you've been in his office, but his hallways are probably the widest one is 30 inches wide. It's a very tight, very constrained space, which is absolutely not conducive at all to what he's doing. But more importantly, based on all the dimensions that are today required for spaces like this, it simply isn't adequate. So Dr. Park is looking to invest in his business, in his property, to be very honest, to serve his client better and appropriately, as he's, to be very honest, required to by federal law, by ADA. There is nothing about him being greedy or trying to make his practice huge. I mean, he's a very honest, sincere guy who's trying to do the best for his practice. Otherwise, he wouldn't have bought a practice in the center of Lynn. The city of Lynn is very lucky, I think, to have a dentist who's willing to do what Dr. Park is doing. It's not an easy clientele. It's not an easy place, and he's trying to do what's right.
We appreciate that.
Yeah, I definitely appreciate that. I mean, I see 12 working stations there. And you talked about how many dentists you have.
Yes.
I don't understand, like, there's 3 dentists need 12, I see 12 working stations there, is that correct?
Well, again, the doctor can explain better than we can, but we've been down this path. The fact is, I think there's 1.5 dentists per month who come in
So
and
why
specialize.
all the stations?
Again, I'm not a dentist.
Yeah, can the doctor answer that?
Sure. So you've been
Would you go?
asked the last couple times how we were here.
I just found that Board of Appeals case was 1957, and the Board of Appeals declined to increase the number of accounts.
Thank you.
Here's my story, which I have stated, but I'll be happy to go over it again with you. 3 main patient base, of which John and Attorney Sam mentioned.
Can you point to all of you?
I've got pediatric patients, and that could be
So the
1, 2, 3,
existing
4
ones
year
are right there on the left there, is that the ortho where it says ortho?
I'll explain to you. So, patients walk in, and I'll give you a sort of a a family's point of view of what's happening. We've got a young child, say a first-time to the dentist, 1-year-old, 2-year-old, 3-year-olds, usually coming with mom. I am creating this space for them to receive care from, say, hygienist or myself or associate dentist of mine who comes in a couple times a month to receive pediatrics. The reason why we have multiple chairs is not to have them all occupied at the same time. Your dentist who has 2 chairs is probably seeing adults that come in. When I see kids come in, a busy mom that takes, and I've got a family of 12 kids as well. They'll bring 3, 4, 5 kids. What that means is at a given time, an 8 a.m. appointment, mother might bring 4 children. Instead of them waiting in the office for 2-3 hours, we're able to provide service for them at the same time, and they leave. And so that's kind of the space I have for here as far as targeting those young children. Treatment room in the back here are for patients that need any procedures, fillings, extractions, privacy, as well as, to be honest, some kids can be very loud and combative. They can get very upset, as many of you can attest to your own dental experiences. So instead of having a 1-year-old getting a cleaning done for the first time, a 5-year-old who needs 10 fillings is in a private room away from the reception, away from the young children's area, where I myself will check the hygienist for cleaning and make sure everything's okay. Once I diagnose something that needs to be addressed, then if the child's behavior is what I consider tense cooperative or tense uncooperative, those children will be seen in the quiet room for that purpose. Now, I've got those kids that are children that are getting older. So these would be 8, 9, 10, 11, and sometimes 15, 16-year-olds that need orthodontic treatment. Or just they're coming in for cleaning. Again, this is a different purpose room in a given slice of the day, given time point of the day. This chairs could be entirely empty, or it could be, if I have a family of 5 here and I have a family of 3 here getting braces, they could be all occupied at the same time. I mean, that's kind of the purpose I have here. So this is targeted for preteens, teens, and orthodontic patients. Now, this space is also for my 25% of my patient base, which is patients that are above the age of 21, adults with special needs. And these are very severely handicapped, very sometimes emotionally or medically compromised patients. And I shared a story here last time. I had a patient that was referred from a general dentist in Lexington, 8-year-old, who happened to see another patient in the waiting room, our current waiting room here, with a missing eye. And a patient that was there to receive care in a comfortable environment, for lack of a better word, ran out of the office, falling. So I'm trying to create a space where it is easier, larger space. You know, I have probably 5% or more of my patients are wheelchair bound. And currently my treatment rooms are, some of them are 7'6" by 6'6", with fixtures on the side. My hygienists work on them upside down for an hour, and it is not conducive to providing adequate care, as John mentioned. So I'm trying to create a space that makes sense for every segment of my patient base and make sure it's well served for those patients. And many of those patients have been in my office for 3 generations. I have 85-year-old patients and I have 75-year-old patients, which is very unusual for any pediatric dentist, even in town of Lynn. Many of them transfer these patients out to general dentists by age 16. We chose to serve them for their lifetime because nobody else will take care of them. So that's my story.
And I think what was explained to me is there was a rationale why this patient population was to enter over here. This patient population was to enter over here. It was hopefully to benefit each and not burden one with maybe the problems of acting out of the other. And so, to strike that balance, that's why it was designed in this fashion. I think we earlier went over the right-of-way comes down here, and the people who arrive by van are discharged and come in through here. which is an accessible entry. So it keeps one element flowing here, one element coming and flowing there. And as the doctor said, you need to treat a family with different age children or different problems. But the number of rooms doesn't equate to the number of dentists. The number of rooms, as I understand it, equates to the services or the space necessary to provide the services for the current population that he serves.
They also reduced it. It was 5, and now it's 3.
What was 5?
How many rooms?
In this area, yeah.
So we think it's a difficult site. We appreciate the input we receive from the members of the board. We try to be sensitive to the needs of the neighbors, and at the same time understand we're bound by what the Architectural Barriers Board says are the minimum requirements for a handicap ramp, and that is enacted in the state zoning law that says that in consideration of these,
And that's been achieved. It's
the
there.
handicap ramp has to be approved in a certain fashion that satisfies the accessibility. I don't know if I told you this story, but the first time I had an issue with a handicap ramp was in a neighboring city where they had a historic district. A good historic, I'm talking about not a historic district, a legitimate, recognized state historic district, Chestnut Street, Salem, whatever. And I represented Bridgewell at the time, and we wanted to put a handicap ramp in. Well, if you've ever been before a historic commission, you can understand that they tell you what, you can have single pane glass, you can have, but as I pointed out to the historic commission in Salem, we could try to do what we did here, which is to blend it in, but I can't change what's mandated by the state with respect to the minimum requirements for handicapped accessibility. And it was a similar kind of effort about, their concern was, if you looked at these homes on Chestnut Street and other places, Federal Street, that how would it look as people were walking by? And we did a similar effort. We tried to make it look residential and retain what we were required to do to satisfy the needs of the handicapped.
So you're saying that everything here, you have the setbacks, but, so the variance is the parking,
Yeah.
right? It's a parking variance we're after, right?
There's no
Right,
variance.
what brings us about is the fact
See the
that
variance?
it's a non-conforming structure
Yeah.
because it's got a residential use, it's got a business use in a residential area, which it's had since 1933. So that makes the use non-conforming.
With less than
Okay.
5 parking spaces?
All right, and then with respect to once you alter a non-conforming use, the question is you then have to impose current parking requirements, of which this building never had to satisfy from 1933 to 1964, and if they never did anything, would never have to satisfy any minimum parking requirements. Because the ordinance said that any use that was established in 1964, which this was not subject to the parking requirements, but that any alteration to a non-conforming building or structure would have to conform. So that, I can't make it a lot bigger, but we explained, we made an arrangement with a neighboring property, and I think Mrs. Curley was down there one day and saw it, I know I did. And I indicated we would accept as a stipulation that the staff not park at the site. That's because A, we have an arrangement, and B, if they can't park at the site, where they park really is a burden for them and for us. But we have made an arrangement, and if you look, there used to be at 81, which is the building on the rear on the left-hand side, that was a dental office. And when I went down there, there were signs all over about use of the parking lot, and if you look at the front of that two-family, and that's who we have the arrangement with, the owner of that two-family, with respect to the spaces, and when I asked, because I was a doubting Thomas, and I asked Chuck Fay to go out there, and he came back and said there were 7 to 10 spaces on that adjoining property where we have, and where Dr. Park's predecessor had entered into the arrangement with regard to use of those spaces. So we're close to what we need in terms of spaces because of the availability of that adjoining property and the arrangement that's been gone on before he came along, and continues. Essentially, the owner of that two-family said, my tenants aren't there during the day when your staff is there. And then when my tenants are there, your staff is not there. And so those kinds of parking arrangements exist throughout the city. But if you look at that number of spaces, which is 7 to 10, and the 5 or 6 we have at the rear, which is one of the reasons we wanted to clean out some of that at the back, I think we addressed that. And we gave you the analysis. We gave you the analysis by zip codes of where the patients come from.
I was reading this, but there was something else from Jim Lamana there that said parking's not an issue. It's just.
I didn't say it wasn't an issue. I said how it was addressed.
Yeah, right.
And I think, but I'm giving you the rationale as to why, okay? You're not required, if this building stays the way it is, there is no required parking. None.
Right.
Right.
And it can stay that way forever, with no required parking. The fact is that the people who preceded Dr. Park and Dr. Park have worked to address that, but I credit John and Dr. Park. They came up with this analysis, which I thought was fabulous, and we gave you the benefit of looking at the patient's zip codes, where they lived in relation to the proximity to the property, and showing you that the bulk of the people were within 15 minutes.
You know, I'm looking at your drawing, and I can see that you took 5 feet off from the sidewalk, but as you go along, it gets narrower and narrower.
So very, very well seen. But what's interesting about this lot is that the lot line does not parallel the buildings. So you are correct that as this lot line continues back, because the building is orthogonal, as most of the buildings are on the street, the same distance is maintained from the face of this building to the face of the neighboring building. It's only that the lot line comes back.
Parallel, it's still 5'3" on the back.
That's correct.
Right.
That's not, is it 5 feet?
Yeah, it's still the same thing.
So
Yeah, but it's further.
it is less here at the corner.
5'3".
5'3".
But it's further in front, because the lot line comes in.
That's right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
That's right.
it's like 10 feet or something.
And we
Like
discussed it
12.
at the very end of last meeting, when we said, yes, we can pull the building back.
Like it was at the time.
And it was at the suggestion of the board that we pushed to the rear. So we said, okay, if you guys would be all right with that, we can try that. And it worked. We lost some rooms and we lost some area, but we're okay. We're okay with how it's working.
Well, it wasn't at my suggestion.
Any other questions at this point? Okay, thank you. Anyone else here wishing to speak in favor? Anyone here wishing to speak in opposition?
Good evening. Please understand words to be no reflection on Dr. Park. We have the utmost respect for his profession and the valuable service he provides in Lynn. The question is not as to the valuable service he provides, but as to whether this expansion indeed is the right location and what it looks like. I'm just going to read my points to be very, very succinct. I believe we also provided them earlier. And we also let Dr. Parks know, my husband, let him know yesterday when I was working. So in this current phase of design, including adjustments dated 2/14/20, we remain vehemently opposed to the project proposed at 71 Broad Street, finding it to be substantially more detrimental than what currently exists. Our major concerns are summarized as the following. 1, the proposed facility has the scale of a large, fully commercial dental clinic rather than the smaller owner-occupied home practices that have operated in this neighborhood over the years. While the owner has not yet indicated an intent to vastly increase the number of patients beyond the amount we presently see, a variance goes with the property. So this proposal must be evaluated in terms of what a facility of this size can potentially accommodate. 2, Zoning of this neighborhood allows for professional practices. However, historically, these have been relatively small practices in owner-occupied buildings. The current design provides the capacity for a much larger practice than ever existed in this neighborhood and is not owner-occupied, thereby not meeting the intention of the original zoning. 3. The proposed addition to 77 Broad Street is too large for the lot and for the neighborhood. While the city solicitor has determined that the 25% cap stipulated in the zoning ordinance section 13, subsection 13.5.1 is not applicable at this time, it remains a worthwhile benchmark to consider. The 2014-2020 design adjusted still depicts a substantial addition, and the recent adjustments to the side of the building should be considered a sliver rather than a slice. As a 5-foot reduction was described by the architect at the February 4th, 2020 meeting as having such a minimal effect. We oppose the proposed abandonment of the residential component of this mixed-use building. Presently, there are no commercial buildings in this neighborhood, nor locate of 77 Broad Street, and placing a fully commercial enterprise in this location will forever alter the character of this area and the neighborhood, and sets a precedent others can follow. 5, significant loss of green space. 6, the current design provides suboptimal on-site parking for patients and staff, and will place higher demand on already limited on-street parking. Potential arrangements for leasing parking spaces from abutting might force neighbor tenants to move their cars onto the street, and so far their schedule changes. The shortage of parking would be exacerbated if future owners of 77 Broad Street were to operate a larger commercial enterprise. Although the city solicitor has determined zoning ordinance are not applicable at this time, the 20 parking spaces stipulated for a clinic of this size in Lynn zoning ordinance section 9, subsection 9.3 remain a worthwhile standard to consider in the review of parking plan presented with this design. Dr. Parks presented a map analysis showing how many clients are within various biking routes and walking time distances from his practice. However, there is no way to discern how many clients will ride their bikes or walk to their appointments. Most actually drive. This is potential 7. There is a potential for a future increase in litter and gum being dropped as patients enter the office, not as they leave. Additionally, it is mainly the neighbors who have been picking up the trash in the front and using a pressure washer to move the gum. 8. While design development stated on February 14, 2020, add architectural treatments, finishes, and building elements to reflect the residential character of the neighborhood, expanding the first floor commercial function to cover the majority of the side lot increases the commercial presence in this predominantly residential neighborhood. No other professional dental and doctor offices are operating anymore in this current neighborhood. 9, in major obstructed views from 3 abutting properties, 71, 73, and 75 Broad Street, resulting from the height, now the increased height up to 3 feet when they increase the roof now. But the architect would probably speak more to the size of the roof and how much it goes up more. So the height, the length, and the proposed addition impacting the quality of life. So what we're seeking. 1, a zoning board of appeals finding that the proposed design be determined to be substantially more detrimental than what currently exists. The finding would not have the effect of canceling the project. Instead, the owners could apply for variances and the proposed project could be measured against particular city zoning ordinances. 2, a ZBA rejection of the owner's request to abandon the long-standing residential component of mixed use of 77 Broad Street. Currently, 77 Broad Street is a mixed use. The first floor is commercial and the second floor is residential. This came about in 1933 when a dentist living at 77 Broad Street requested permission to establish a dental practice on the first floor of his home. Well, the 1933 change added a commercial use to the property. It preserved the residential use component. We believe that making 77 Broad Street fully commercial would adversely affect the long-standing character of the neighborhood as a mixed commercial residential area and set a precedent others can follow. 3, in the event the ZBA goes against our recommendation and accepts any portion of the owner's request for a finding of not substantially more detrimental, we are asking the Zoning Board of Appeal to place the following stipulations on its findings. A, restrict the first floor commercial use to either a clinic or a professional practice and prohibit any other commercial uses. 2, require the architectural treatments, finishes, and building elements presented in the February 14, 2020 design. 3, the submittal and ZBA approval of a detailed landscaping plan with the plan indicating mature plantings. D, a detailed parking plan requirement that changes to the parking and changes to leases of parking spaces be brought before the Zoning Board of Appeals for approval. Homes get sold. The leases and the deal he has now with the current neighbors to park there it can change in an instant. And we cannot, so it can change in an instant. And E, a timeline for the start of construction and to finish not to exceed 1 year, given our previous experience. And finally, an agreement that the owner will regularly clean trash in front of his property. Thank you.
Anyone else anyone else interested in being recorded?
Yes, my name is Ricardo Suber. I own property at 73 Broad Street. Basically, I concur with the Queenies. You know, they read a lot, and most of what they're concerned with, my wife and I are concerned with, basically the same thing. So no need for me to go over generally the parking, the green space, and so forth. So I concur. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there a way I can ask him a question?
Pardon me?
Would I be able to ask him a
Go
question?
right ahead.
So you concur with denying it, or the second part was acceptable with the stipulation? Because I think it was two parts of the letter, is that we agree with it to move forward with this, but you're also agreeing with the stipulation, or you're agreeing not to grant them?
I'm agreeing with the stipulation.
Okay.
If we grant
Thank
it.
you.
Yeah, good. Where's the architect, John? Just what's the investment? What are we talking here for the investment?
Cost.
Yeah.
Potentially.
What are we looking at?
Well, I haven't had a conversation with the client yet. But, new construction costs at the moment are about $300 to $350 a square foot, plus rental costs for the other side. So we might take the total square footage, which was 3415.
That's how much you're adding?
No, total.
Yeah.
Total. But it's new plus reno.
And it's also healthcare, so I mean, it's not going to be a residential, a living room, kitchens, and
Is the whole first floor going to be blown out in this project?
Not
Yeah.
blown out, but changed.
Renovated, yeah.
Renovated.
Yeah. In the exterior.
Yeah.
So what are we talking ballpark?
Hundreds of thousands of dollars.
In equipment?
Yes.
yeah, it's a healthcare facility, it's not a residential.
So you're adding 1,500 square feet, 1,400 square feet?
Correct.
So I was just thinking in my head, I was thinking sort of along those lines, as, if the addition got denied, you could still do a lot to reconstruct your small hallways and things like that inside the space.
We spent 6 months to a year studying that, because that, of course, was our first option as well. But because the hallways aren't adequate, because the room sizes aren't adequate, and because working in existing space is very difficult in general, it wasn't feasible. It was only then, once we vetted that option, that we explored the renovation.
You can always take out walls and restructure the interior of a building, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
We looked at doing all of that.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of space.
Mm.
And it would be useful to go see the space. It's really quite inadequate.
This is the existing plan.
You want to see existing plan?
And because it was a house at one time, most of those rooms were an old living room, an old dining room, stairs and such, and several of the walls are low-bearing walls.
This is the proposed.
And we're making an effort to keep some of the load-bearing walls, the ones which are gray, are actually to be maintained because the floor trusses are spanning across this direction, right? So we're trying to keep a load-bearing part of the building on the inside. All that's white is essentially new.
While you're looking at the papers, can I just voice my opposition to this entire proposal?
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, sure. Please come up.
We've been living at 73 Broad Street for almost 50 years, and I am really dismayed over the entire proposal. I think that it's going to change the entire character of the neighborhood, and I'm opposed, and I will remain opposed, and I'm with the Queenies, and certainly concur with what they're saying today. I ask that you not grant this, because it's going to certainly change the way we live. The obstruction, there is an obstruction. We will not be able to see to the street because we sit in the back, and this proposed building will obstruct our views completely. And I am also opposed to the lack of green space that will be provided. There are a couple of trees, if not 3 trees, that stand in that yard, that proposed space, and I know they'll have to be demolished. And that's one factor that is of beauty in that area, and that will all have to be done away with. And so I ask that you seriously consider approving this, disapproving it. I thank you very much.
Okay.
It's Ruth.
Your name and address. For the record.
Ruth Suber, 73 Broad.
Any other questions? You guys are on this. No, Floyd's on it, and his son, and Mr. Kevin, and myself, and Jane. Any questions?
No, I think I'm good.
Any motion?
Motion to grant.
Motion's been made. Any stipulations?
Pretty much.
Well, can we ask if they agree to the stipulation?
Well,
We don't have to agree.
You don't have to agree.
Well, no, they want to follow it, or do we just say do it?
We stipulate, yeah.
Yeah, they can stipulate. Yeah, there was one with a, yeah, so it'll be yes to grant with the
Well,
stipulation.
the parking one is,
So
The
we
parking
should-
lot one is not valid. I think it's been
So one
already
was like
pulled out.
restrict commercial use of it, so
We-
it's zoned for this. Does it mean that the future people have to stay within that?
Yeah.
Yes,
Yes.
yeah, they have to stay
Yeah.
within that, and we think that that is
Correct.
legal.
The
That's
other
legal.
stipulation was required materials. So the materials that they showed today,
It's exactly what, yeah.
landscape, they want to make sure that if trees are indicated as mature,
Correct.
not tiny stuff.
Exactly.
Parking plan, so.
Parking one is not valid. I think it's been ruled out by the city solicitor.
The timeline for the start of construction to finish not to exceed 1 year.
That should be fine.
But we actually really can't control that one.
But see, that's what I want to ask.
Yeah.
Well, it can be,
Yeah, but he said it's fine with that.
yeah, well, you know, if something happened, their financing, they could always come back in here and,
Yep, okay.
Okay.
If
And
I,
then the last stipulation was clean trash.
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah.
The lease, too, there was something about the lease.
The lease, something about parking plan.
Parking plan and the lease of the parking, providing the lease for
The
the.
parking one is not part of, correct me if I'm wrong here, but it's not part of this petition. Or at least it's not valid. At least not Attorney Mamada.
Yeah, city
So we
solicitor.
can stipulate that they provide the lease that they say they have.
Or they can show where they're giving permission to park.
Sure.
So if the lot next door says this is 6, they can show it in the plan where additional parking.
I can just read from what the neighboring owner said as far as parking.
No.
Would you
We'd
be able
rather
to
That's not what we're asking for.
We'd rather see the plan and then they can see it and everybody else can see where people are going to be parking.
So it's gonna have to conform with it. I just wanted you to know what it was. The neighbor had indicated, as I described, that it'd be for business hours only.
Sure, that's fine.
Yeah.
I think
But
something
we
will have to be
should get something
submitted, yeah.
We'll have to have something about it.
If I may just remark on item B, we are absolutely fine with moving forward with everything that we've shown you. However, these are schematics on drawings, right?
Sure.
So if the stone ends up being a little bit more brown than what's shown, and I'm being sincere here,
Yeah.
I do worry that we would get called out for that. But there has to be
Yeah.
some flexibility, I think, in B, that is the design intent that's expressed in these drawings.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there a second? So a motion has been made and seconded to approve with the conditions as,
The conditions will be stipulations, restricted a commercial use, stay within the perimeter of a dentist office. Go by the original plans that I showed to us tonight, a landscaping plan, and they'd like mature plants put into the area. And, did you say timeline?
Yeah, 1 year.
1 year?
From
and if there's an issue with that, they have to come back to us.
I'm sorry, what? Come back to you.
From the start of construction.
Yeah.
Okay. And also clean up the trash.
Does the motion also include the abandonment of the residential component of the mixed use? I didn't even
No, because the first point actually, we're keeping it the way it is.
They just, I mean, they didn't say they were gonna abandon it, they said they
Yeah.
weren't gonna use it as a residential.
No, sir, I think the attorney said he wanted to abandon the residential component of the mixed-use building and make it entirely commercial.
What's the question?
Do you want to clarify that?
What's the, is your proposal to abandon the residential use permanently?
Well, I can't say forever, because I don't know what's gonna happen. You can say it's his use, but
Oh, that's true.
some other owner can come in and
Yeah.
it's in a residential neighborhood and it's in an R5 district and it's on a lot of whatever. I don't.
Yeah, we
I
can't
can
really
imagine
enforce
something
that.
else.
Oh, so the building will still have the classification of a mixed-use commercial residential building?
Yes.
Yes.
You understand that
Yeah.
residential component will be abandoned? Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah,
That'll
yeah,
be maintained then, thank you.
yep.
Mr. McElroy.
Yes, to grant all the stipulations.
Mr. Wooten, to grant with stipulations.
Yes, to grant stipulation.
Mrs. Curley, to grant with stipulations.
I'm sorry, I don't see what the hardship is here, and it's just too big a project for that area.
Well,
I deny.
I just want to make it clear, this is not a variance or a hardship. The question is whether what's proposed is substantially more detrimental than the existing.
I deny.
I understand, but it's not a variance.
Fine.
And with respect to the use, there'll continue to be a dental clinic with no required parking, if that's the will of the board.
It's too massive. Doesn't belong in that area, in my opinion.
Mr. Kellen. And Mr. Cole.
Grant. Petition loses 3-2. Okay. I don't know, who's married?
All 5 members.
Pardon me?
5 members are on it.
Well, Dan's gone and-
Associates can go on it.
They can go on it.
Yeah, they've been here.
Terry,
They've been here right along.
Terry,
Terry, yep. And
Terry,
you're on this one.
Mr. Wooten.
okay.
We have two more pieces of business, actually. So here we are with case number 9917. 6567 Broad Street. Petitioners Paul Queenie and Rose Gould. An administrative appeal of finding an inspectional services letter dated October 18th, 2019 regarding 6567 Broad Street. Just to let everybody know that we had requested that Mr. Donovan take another look at his letter and also another look on the compliance and what his feelings were, and we got a response. There's a copy of his letter. Just got it today, actually. He had been away for a week, I guess so. But we did want to request that. So, dear Mr. Cole, in response to your inquiry regarding the above referenced property, I have viewed the property and reviewed the board's record. As you are aware, the Inspectional Services Department initiated an enforcement action against the owners of the property on June 26, 2019, in response to an abutters complaint. Based upon this correspondence and conversations with an agent of the owner, modifications were made to the parking area and landscaping, and the attached plan dated October 5, 2018 was submitted. Based upon this information, correspondence dated October 18, 2018 was issued by the undersigned terminating the enforcement action as I found the owner to be in substantial compliance with the Zoning Board of Appeals decision dated December 4, 2012. As stated and by my observations and personal opinion of the work, I found the ground improvements to be substantially complete with the ZBA's approved plan and decision. The pavement lines and area vary in more than one location, and the non-paved areas are slightly shaped differently than as approved. The approved plan and decision, however, while showing paving versus non-paved areas, did not specify planting or landscaping materials, so no opinion may be issued regarding the conformance of the character of the material used in these areas by the owner. Please be aware that the actual percentage of compliance in regard to paved versus non-paved areas can only be determined by having the owner submitted an as-built plan prepared by a registered land surveyor showing the existing versus proposed condition and measuring the areas where differences occur. At the time I made my observations of the property, there were no illegal uses of the parking lot occurring. I am not disputing the abutters' claim of non-conforming usage on the parking lot, however. The policing of off-hour usage of the lot, not viewable by a member of this department, has not occurred. Sincerely, Michael Donovan, Chief ISD Building Commissioner. So that is, he's still basically maintaining that it is still, for the most part, substantially in compliance. So, all right, so since you've brought the case, that we will hear you first, and then we are going to allow the owner and her counsel to respond. So, is it your intention to read the same, what was delivered today?
Yes. Because I believe all the other records are already entered into record, and the pictures and the evidence and everything else. So, this is just the abridged one. On January 7, 2020, we respectfully requested the ZBA to take the necessary actions to compel the owners of 6567 Broad Street to fully comply with the stipulations required for variance in case number 9635, or to rescind the variance as the lack of compliance has been substantially more detrimental than what has existed prior. We have provided you with evidence after evidence of this. To fully comply with the variance, the owners must do the following forthwith: remove the excess pavement, which was not on the plan. Place planting to improve the mature shrubs and grass in all designated green space areas that was on the plan. Parking should never exceed 6 vehicles at any time, and no parking should occur outside the painted lines as indicated on the stipulated plan. Excess parking creates a public safety hazard in that it impedes access to emergency response vehicles and apparatus. If you need the parking to be shown in the paved over green space for the last 3, 4, 5 days, the last few weeks, we can do it, as we've done before. Insofar that the owners choose not to fully comply, Mass General Law, Chapter 48, Section 10 stipulates that when rights authorized by a variance are not exercised within 1 year of the date of grant, such rights shall lapse and may be reestablished only after notice in a new hearing pursuant to the provisions of this section. As of today, the owners of 6567 Broad Street have not complied fully with the requirements for variance granted in 2012. Given the failure to comply after 7 years, it is reasonable to conclude that the owners have breached the variance and the rights have lapsed. As a ZBA hearing on January 7, 2020, Mr. Patrick Helen, a ZBA member for 46 years, stated, "Mr. Chairman, it's unusual for stipulations to come back to haunt us. We regard stipulations as gospel, not gossip. We ask that the ZBA to act in this case in a manner that will enable continuation of the long-standing tradition where ZBA stipulations are taken seriously by applicants. The outcome of this case does not just impact us, but may have more significant negative implications throughout the community and goes against both the mayor and the city council's goal of revitalizing Lynn. Already, the handling of this case by the Inspectional Services Department that they will not or cannot fully enforce ZBA requirements has established a precedent that allows others to exploit the gap and negatively impact other neighborhoods. Depending on the outcome tonight, another negative precedent may be set where future ZBA applicants might view the Zoning Board of Appeals stipulations as suggestions rather than requirements. We believe that forbearance on the part of the ZBA is bad public policy. For over a century, owner-occupied single and multifamily properties have helped stabilize neighborhoods. However, in the last decade, the trend has turned to non-owner-occupied properties, whereby there is little to no enforcement of trash, parking code, and zoning ordinances by the city or the absentee property owners. Owner-occupied properties are crucial anchors in the city, and lack of enforcement and blatant disregard for the inspectional services and the Zoning Board of Appeals stipulations, as represented in this case, will result in only fueling the mass exodus of owner-occupied properties. We thank you for your time and attention in this matter.
Anyone else wishing to add anything? Just point on that.
Thank you.
Les Perance.
Attorney Les Perance for Stephiana Ladner. She's here. She is a resident of Lynn with her husband. Her husband's just an appearance for the record. Her husband is a successful restaurateur in Somerville and plans on moving or opening some businesses in Lynn, and one child. They were going to move down to Broad Street, but due to, and we have pictures here, she spent $41,000 for the backyard. Pavement, lines, landscaping. If you see dirt, like right here, without grass, it's been cleaned, raked, and loomed. She can't plant seed, obviously. Well, spring comes and goes, it seems, this winter, but until it's there. Here's a bigger shot of the parking area.
When was this done?
When was that done? Step on it.
So we finished it finally with all the changes that the commissioner wanted and requested in October last year.
So it took you 7 years to get this far?
No,
They were very small changes and additions that needed to be done. Very small things.
Well, I'm asking about this.
That was,
What in particular, Mrs. Curley?
that's from over. So we ended up changing the curb of that walk path. That was the last change we did, which that was what inspectional services asked for.
Yeah, but the bed in the middle wasn't even required, that was you guys.
That's right, good point, she
It's not
went
like
more.
it took 7 years.
You just added more.
It's a little overwhelming, but I bought this house when I was actually 21. My dad helped me, and I thought, I could put in some money and, make it nice. My plan was to actually move in there. Financially, it was tough. I thought construction wasn't that expensive. So the house was empty for a few years. Then I rented it to a nice family because the house in the front was a pretty big house. It had 14 bedrooms, and I don't have 14 kids, so I couldn't live there by myself. And then after a few years, I was able to save enough money to actually do the construction, which it started in 2018. That's when
Yeah.
Well, when you bought this property, it was an absolutely gorgeous piece of property.
Thank you.
You know, when you bought it, it's not now. When you bought it, it was a gorgeous piece of property. The landscaping, everything was beautiful. But all that changed. Now it's a hot top mess, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, it went through a lot to finish it. Now it looks nice, of course.
There's a lot of hot top in there. A lot of hot top for parking. That's what it is.
Well, there had to be 6 spaces.
Yeah, we required 6
Required
spaces.
6 spaces. So the board, I believe you were sitting at that time.
I was chairman of the board at that time, and I
Okay.
never voted for this, I'll tell you now.
Well,
I wasn't here.
it was a few years ago. My client wanted this in for the record. Council Lapierre had submitted a letter.
Yeah, which I was gonna read his letter, but now there's another letter.
We have this letter. She responded, and attached to that is her and her husband registered to vote for the city of Lynn. One of these pictures, let's see. This picture here shows the Queenie residence. One of the reasons why Estefania will not move her family down there, there's probably 6 cameras pointed right into her property, right into the backyard. There was a tenant that complained that one of the cameras was pointed right at his bedroom, and he is now moving out at a loss of $1,800 a month for we don't know how long. The bushes that they refer to are actually 50-50. They're actually half on her line and half on the Queenie's line. The additional work that my client did, for instance, to make it nicer, was a nice brick walkway. She expended extra money for that, for the landscaping, nice granite curbs. And the planter, I think someone was referring to right there. That was the other part to make it nice with the walkway. That planter is something that's mobile if you can lift it, but it's a planter. It looks nice.
So I had the landscaping guy, and the plan was for the summer, when we got nice weather, that he was gonna put grass in there. Yeah, because he did the front and the side of the house in the front. The plan was that the weather would get better and we would put more green. Now, the plan for this house was for me to move into the first floor. I did a beautiful 3-bedroom with a jacuzzi in the bathroom, and that was my plan. Then my husband, which unfortunately he had to be at the restaurant, he couldn't be here tonight, he apologized, but he felt like our neighbors were getting too involved in the construction way too much, and he likes his privacy. He doesn't want people to be on top of him, looking through the window, seeing when we get out, when we come in. We have a 3-year-old, and that was something that he felt that we couldn't live there. So we live at 98 Hanover Street, which is not a beautiful home. I don't have space there, which is okay, but...
And I think...
Well, what was the problem with doing this the way you were supposed to do it from the Board of Appeals in the first place? What was the problem with that?
So, and I would say that my fault was the ignorance of not knowing much about construction. When we finished the construction in the front of the house on 65 Broad Street, which we did the 2-family instead of 3, my guy, the general contractor, a good friend of mine, he couldn't actually do the work on the landscaping or, the lot. So he recommended a few people. Back then, it was September, I was concerned about the weather because you can't do much if it starts to snow and all that, and I was concerned about my tenants not being able to park inside. So I was looking into getting numbers and getting things done right away. I didn't have much money back then, and I decided, unfortunately, to go with someone that was not professional. It was overwhelming, but this guy, he started doing the work. We paid him money, and then he left for like 2 months. He wasn't picking up the phone. He disappeared. He did a mess in this house, and my fault was for not coming into inspectional services and saying, what can I do? I didn't know this guy he didn't get any permits. He just did a whole mess. He evaluated the property. I couldn't sleep. It was bad. He took $20,000 from me, and then after 4 months, he actually left, and they know that he left his huge pickup. No, he left his truck there in the middle of the driveway. No one could park there. He just disappeared. I was looking for him. I actually went into the sheriff, and anyway, so he ended up coming back.
So who finished the work? Same.
Well, she unfortunately was in the sad position of having that company finish it.
No one wanted to take the job.
No.
I tried. I was like, I don't care if we're going to pay more. We actually had to get a loan from the bank. And then the guy ended up, so to make the story short, I ended up, because I'm very involved in the Hispanic community, posting something on Facebook saying, this guy stole money from me. Please make sure you don't get this guy. Right, because this guy is actually, his truck is everywhere in Lynn.
Yeah.
I still see him doing jobs. So then that guy actually called me back, and he said that I was ruining his business, that he was going to finish the work, he just had a family emergency. So he ended up coming back.
So he finally finished the job in September?
He finished it, but I was very concerned. I wanted to make sure that, the 5 feet from the line of the neighbors. He kept saying that it didn't have to be, it was just easier and cheaper if he wouldn't do the walk path. It was my fault for being
But to conclude, we have a 93A claim we're going to file against that company, which is a side issue. So it was a little bit of bad luck, Mrs. Curley, too, that precluded finishing these incidentals. I have here a email dated October 1st from Mike Donovan to the architect that was designing some of these things in the backyard and was in conversation. Her name is Miss Welburn. I'll read this and submit it for the record. This is from Mike Donovan, dated October 1st, 2019. Miss Welburn, thank you for the update. Upon receipt and review of the land surveyor's findings, I will close out this complaint and send correspondence to the owner stating that she is in compliance with the ZBA's conditions. He said conditions, singular.
Well, that's what he says.
Yeah.
But he also says she didn't do everything.
No, he says there she's in compliance.
But she didn't do everything that this board told her to do, and she agreed to.
For instance, the inspectional services says that it's complete.
And to stop, filing for the, I think for cost, right?
Right. Yeah.
My examination of this plan showed that it fully outlines the mediation efforts you have made on the lot. Based upon my examination of this plan, it is my determination that the lot is not fully, but substantially in conformance. You didn't do it all.
What date is that, Ms. Curley?
This is,
That was the old one.
October.
Yeah, that was the initial letter.
Yeah, we have a
Since
new one.
been corrected.
Right.
Yeah, we have a new one from Donovan.
And he withdrew it. He withdrew his previous correspondence October 18th.
I understand
If I may
that.
approach
I
you and
know,
give you that.
But he also said she did a lot of it, but some of it she didn't do.
And he took that back in this letter right here. He takes back what he said. He asked clearly for the record.
Yeah, you're correct. Yeah, you're correct. That's what he said previously, but then later he issued another letter saying that they stopped finding them money,
Yes.
right? And then it's now in compliance.
Right. Accordingly, I withdraw my previous correspondence of September 16th, revoking the occupancy certificate of this. I'm sorry?
No, I'm sorry, I wasn't speaking to you, I was speaking to Mary.
Accordingly, I withdraw my previous correspondence of September 16th, 2019, revoking the occupancy certificate for this property, and have closed the outstanding complaint regarding non-conformance to the Board of Appeals approval.
That's simply because...
Please be...
I'm sorry, go
That's
ahead.
okay. Please be further aware that in accordance with City zoning, you can appeal the decision of the Zoning Board of Appeals. That's very clear.
It's very clear, that's very clear to me that in his opinion, she did 90% of what had to be done, so that the rest of it is okay.
What do you base 90% on?
That it is not fully, but substantially in conformance. It's not fully.
And what substantial has different meanings. To Mr. Queenie, he said it's 50%. It's ample or considerable is the definition of substantial. And
All I
ample or
know is
considerable.
I did not vote for what is there now today. That is not what I voted for 7 years ago. 7 years this has been going on. That's a disgrace, an absolute disgrace.
What did you vote for?
I voted for more green. That's what I voted for, less hot top.
How can we get 6 spaces in there, Mrs. Curley, that could turn around and conform with the regulations of...
Well, someplace it's here.
Excuse me.
Excuse me, can you
Mr. Queenie,
please sit down?
I didn't interrupt you.
All right.
Thank you.
I was just trying to pass out some papers, it wasn't...
We have those. I've looked at them, but you can pass them out in a minute.
Okay, thank you.
Mrs. Curley, I don't think you could conform with the parking regulation.
No,
9 by 18, 5 feet from the sidelines, etc., without
I got it right here.
what's before you.
This was the parking plan December 4th, 2012. And there's an area on the side of 65 Broad Street that's in red. Well, it's in red here. Also have, and that's one of the main areas of contention, I believe, is that right now there's a 7th car that is now able to park off the street and pull in there. And is it lined?
It's marked with hash marks, so that doesn't take place right here. Those are hash marks to not
There
let
it
a car
is.
park there.
That was the,
Yeah, see, on the original plan, that was shown as some bushes and
Okay.
green space.
Well, I would repeat what the architect said about 77 Broad. If the color of the stone changes ultimately, I mean, I think that's what we can say about this to analogize it. If it's a little bit of landscaping over here to make the parking work, that's what I think happened, Mr. Chairman.
You still can't park there.
You can't park there, there's hash marks.
Just grab a bunch of plants and put it right there.
Yeah, right here.
Right. Well,
That's the area right
it's
here.
just a plow too.
They did it over here.
Just have it plowed.
Well, it was gonna be a narrow drive-in. Narrow drive-in.
Let's look at the 2 parking spaces here. though.
Yeah, and the 4 over there. Yeah.
I think it comes down to Mr. Donovan's opinion. He runs ISD. This has been an ongoing issue, and there's more to this than just appealing. She showed up, she has a voice recording from Mrs. Queenie threatening to go to a restaurant and say all sorts of things, stand in front of one of the restaurants. They put cameras up into the parking lot. This has become a personal issue for Queenie.
she eats sushi in Somerville, and Union Square, and sushi couple in the town.
Anything else?
No, thank you. We would just ask that you go along with what your inspectional services department is supposed to do, and that's their job, which they have done, Mr. Donovan has done.
case.
Thank you. Any questions of us, Mr. Chairman?
I don't have any at this point. No. So I will read the letter from Councilor at Large. Mr. Chairman, calling money to support my council colleague, Ward 4 Councilor Richard Calucci, and neighbors Paul Queenie and Rose Gould, next door residents of 6567 Broad Street. I apologize for not being able to testify in person as I had a previous obligation to attend. I have reviewed the history of this case and the prior decisions and stipulations that were agreed to in case 9635. That's the one back in 2012. And believe that the board should consider the magnitude and chilling effect that leaving this decision, as it would create an adverse precedent that would allow scores of residents throughout our great city to cut corners and not abide by the ZBA's previous prudent and responsible decisions. I support a restoration and upholding of the previous stipulations that included green space, landscaping, and limits the amount of parking spaces. And it has become a hazard and encroachment to immediate neighbors as bushes and shrubbery has suffered damage from delivery trucks trying to egress out of the driveway due to the reduced width of it, where landscaping has become parking spots. I hope as you deliberate this case that you consider the previous decision that a few of you were present for and demand that the owner finally conform to that decision and bring the site back in compliance with the original variance that was granted. Sincerely, Brian LaPierre, Council at Large. A response to Mr. LaPierre, I have money to let you know that I am aware of the correspondence addressed to Chairman Cole from the Zoning Board of Appeals. As a proud resident of Lynn, I don't believe it was appropriate for you to take a position in this case without hearing both sides. I live with my husband and 3-year-old daughter at 98 Hanover Street in Lynn since 2015. I enjoy going out to the local restaurants, taking my daughter to our local parks, and I have been invested in my community. Both my husband and I are immigrants, my husband from Guatemala and I from Argentina, and we consider ourselves proud members of the Latinx community. Based on the circumstances of this case, I have felt discriminated against based on my ethnic identity by my neighbors. It is difficult to feel safe and welcome in a community where I keep being attacked. After reading your letter, I now feel discriminated against by others. With this being said, I will make my husband and I own 2 homes in the city of Lynn. We pay our property taxes and we've invested our savings into our homes, including 6567 Broad Street. After many years of not voting, my husband now registered to vote for the city of Lynn. Sincerely, Mrs. Ladner. So we've got all the letters on the record. Any feelings, board members?
I have a feeling. I think it's sad that you see it as discrimination. I think you presented yourself very nicely here with your attorney and counsel, and you made a great presentation. I don't think that it should be seen as discrimination if 2 neighbors have a dispute. I just leave my thoughts at that. Thank you.
I just want to say, no matter how it goes, this is a better project for the effort that you guys have put into it. You got both sides on both sides of you. This one here, because probably you're zealous, due diligence or whatever, it is, you probably made it a better project, and you should be commended for that. What it comes down to is, do we feel that what remains, what is a deviation from the original plan? Does that cause to be in, basically void the variance? And I don't think that's the case. I think for the major issue here was to take the doctor's offices out of the 67 and make it a single family, and then allow 2, was it 2 additional units in the front?
No, just one.
Just 1 additional unit
Yeah.
in the front.
It was a 1 family and ended up being 2.
It ended up being 2. So to me, that was the heart and soul of the entire variance. And it got done, right?
Yes. Yes.
So.
And I would say for the record, just before you take your vote, that for the record, I'm not even sure on the administrative appeal. If you appeal a decision of the Zoning Board of Appeals, it's very, very strict. The courts look at it very strict. I went through it myself in the recent case, the 20-day rule, the 65-day rule, the 100-day rule, whatever rule. I'm not so sure that 7 or 8 years later, it was the proper way to do it. But she has complied, according to Mr. Donovan and the inspectors.
The bottom line is, if we vote to, in support of the petition, doesn't mean anything's gonna get done, because we're not an enforcement
We're
agency.
not, and they stop enforcing it.
And you've got Mr. Donovan at this point basically saying,
It's done.
it's done.
Close, and case closed.
Yeah. So no matter how it goes, I just want everybody to understand that. We vote with you, it's not gonna change, probably won't change anything. But I don't know. I don't know, let's see, gonna continue taking it somewhere else. But that's the truth of the matter. At this point, we do not do enforcement. And Mr. Donovan has taken a look at it, which we requested, and feels that he feels that in his mind, it meets the test, that the variance for the most part has been complied with. That's all I got to say on that one.
Mr. Chairman, if I may ask a question?
Sure.
At the last meeting, you received a letter from Attorney Lamanna, and he said in addition to Mr. Donovan going back to make an inspection, he was developing some legal recommendations for the Zoning Board of Appeals to answer some questions. Can you tell me if the attorney has responded back to you?
No, I think he, for whatever reason, nope. I just asked him a question on the procedure tonight, but there were no recommendations from
Okay, because
Mr.
we thought he was asked the question whether or not this panel had the authority to rescind the variance.
Yeah, I don't think.
He hasn't answered that one.
I'll tell you, it'd be tough to vote to rescind based on the evidence. It wouldn't be prudent on our part, and I certainly could put us in some sort of jeopardy. I don't know what.
Okay.
That's just my personal feeling. The majority of the variance, what it was granted for, has been complied with.
Thank you.
I understand there are issues with the parking.
Do you feel that the defects in the parking, the excess pavement that you have a copy of, we feel that contributes to a circumstance that makes the current condition significantly more detrimental than what existed before?
To what though? How is it more detrimental?
Because of the excess pavement, additional cars parked there, and we have photographs of a FedEx truck that couldn't get out because the excess cars were parked where that excess pavement is. It had to drive over the curbs that her contractor put in and right up onto our property.
You see how that's going to shrink if they did all that landscaping. It's going to make it worse.
Because it wouldn't be worse because cars wouldn't park there anymore.
It wouldn't double.
So then vehicles could get back and forth.
I feel like it's certainly much better design,
But
for circulation.
Well, I don't think you want to park against the building of a fire truck.
We have evidence, yeah.
So are you saying that when you do these, because we came here, we've changed our schedule 7 years ago when I was working internationally to come here, and we said we do not want this to become an asphalt jungle. That was a concern. Those were my exact words. We were shown this at that time, and we were saying...
We were assured we built to this.
Yes, it would be built exactly, because we asked that. 6 cars, these measurements, this green space, even adding new green space. This is what we were told and promised. And now, as a result, you have seen the pictures. You have seen how often over 6 cars park, commercial vehicles park, everybody parks. Even in the last few days, we've had 3 cars every day parking here.
In excess of the 6.
In excess. We do not have green space here. We have dirt, we have rubble, we have, little green pivots here. We do not have any shrubs as to what you're saying.
But she sent one with tons of cars parked there.
She see rubbles and dirt right now.
Let me suggest this. I grew up at 240 Euclid Avenue. Euclid Avenue is a busy street, as Broad Street is. What are we saying? People can't have visitors. We can't, it's not a commercial property. It's residential. They can't have visitors, we can't have a cookout, invite your family over. If we look over the fence to the Queenie's property and the house that's in the back, there's been more than 6 cars parked there, I'm told, by my client at different times. Maybe they were having a party, maybe it was something else, but that's gonna happen.
We haven't had concerns about, you know, extra cars for parking, but we showed the committee with photographs where routine overnight parking of more than 6 vehicles.
Yeah, well, that's ISD. ISD needs to enforce that.
Right.
You know, that's not.
But my point was, the reason why I thought it was pertinent to the board was because that excess parking is facilitated by this excess pavement that shouldn't be there. Had that pavement not been there, you would have, and these 2 red spots down there. So this really, it is, I understand, you know, you can't address excess parking, but the excess parking is facilitated by the fact that it wasn't built to this plan that was approved.
So we
Well,
don't
let me ask
understand
something.
why.
Sorry, just
No, go ahead.
when this was approved, exactly, I wasn't here. You guys also approved materials, meaning the type of lawn, the type of grass, the type of asphalt.
No, they were showing diagrammatic. They were showing diagrammatic.
That's what Mike said, there was
Right, so you
no
never
as
approved
built.
those things, so how do you determine what he has to put in there? We just
Well, I think the layperson would see these and think they're bushes. You know, people have,
And we
the
were
drawings
told
have,
that
lines on a piece of paper have meaning. If this area had been purely gray, you would expect it to be plain. You have these circles, a reasonable person would assume those might be shrubs.
I would respectfully disagree. There's so much landscaping there in green space. On the side of the house, on the rear of the house. The house in the rear itself has a full backyard of grass and side yards of grass. There's plenty of green space. They've added trees and shrubs. Put a very expensive planter out in the middle so cars won't turn around in front of the house. As you can see in there.
Some passions on I brought extras.
And I would like to speak to Mrs. Ladner's innuendo, her unsubstantiated innuendo. Since she put that on the record, I think we need to defend our side of the court.
Let's wait till the...
If you want the phone, you want the message ready to the
Yeah, and
record?
You know something?
The chairman won't allow it.
At this point in
We
time,
can stick to the facts of the case.
I don't want to go there.
Okay.
We've given everybody so much latitude on this case. This has been going 3 meetings or
How are
whatever.
we giving latitude when we've been dealing with this for 7 years under a decision that you agreed to, that we all agreed to here, that Mrs. Stephania Ladner agreed to? How are we
This
inconvenienced
plan
you when
this plan wasn't imposed upon Ms. Ladner. She offered this to the committee, to the zoning board of appeals, and the committee accepted it. That was offer and acceptance. That's an agreement. The agreement became binding and was made a stipulation.
So isn't that section right there?
So this should go all the way up to that little round thing.
This
You can see that
manhole is where the grass should be. So the grass should be coming down here. So this should all be grass space coming down here. This is that crescent space here. This is where the manhole is on that crescent space. So this is where that manhole is. This was proposed as all grass, and now it's all asphalt. You can fit two cars here minimum.
Can you put anything there to prevent a car from parking there?
The planters,
But the
the
plan
move.
that
Excuse me. I'm talking.
Mr. Chairman.
Is this? I'm just saying. Is there something that can be?
You put it in that plan.
We put the planter, this is a better picture, I think, for what
That's
you're
from the
asking.
camera this morning.
Yeah.
I ended up.
That planter was put there.
No, we're talking over here, right here, but in front of, on the side of 65.
Let me explain why we spent more money on opening that space. Neighbors right next door, they kept complaining daily through text, email, phone calls, voicemails about my tenants touching their trees on the side of their house. So I figured, let's make this easier for everybody, and I was able to open it more so then they wouldn't even be close to the walk path. That was the whole point. I was actually even thinking about them. I spent even more money on the rocks covering that instead of leaving the old ones that didn't even look nice.
Instead of taking this out, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
She added that in, and she had to make it up somewhere for the cars to get in and turn around. There's the Queenie's house right there. There's a couple of other shots of it. And that's a nice way to do it. Nice way to do the side yard. There's minimal room for green space anyway. It's right here.
If they did build this, they'd have to take away this.
Right. The
They'd have to
opposite
take
side.
away this. Then they'd
Yeah,
probably be illegally parking over here, right super close to you.
But now there's a curb there, at least now there's a curb that although a big truck drove over the curb, but before, when people were hitting the bushes, there was no construction. This was a gravel driveway for almost a year.
And
So
a walkway.
people would, with this curb would prevent people from, hitting the bushes. Although a big truck did drive over, bend over her curb and her curbing and hit this bush. But, this is a deterrent that wasn't there before. We made a lot of complaints about people hitting bushes.
Yeah, I think kind of, Attorney Esperance made a good point. I mean,
Sure.
we are in a, you are in a congested area. You are next to a multifamily property, and I mean, it's difficult to to expect that people aren't going to park wherever they can,
We understand that, but what we expected though was that they would abide by the plan that they offered to the ZBA. The ZBA accepted and made as a stipulation.
I think you got to take that up with Mike Donovan, because he's given us.
Well, you are able to overrule his decision. You have the power to do that.
Yeah, and we depend on him to go and inspect and tell us what he thinks. And he thinks that they've met the compliance. And like the chairman said,
what does this board think?
The main.
It's a funny situation where on the other side, the issue is they don't have enough parking, and now on this side, you want to take a space away. That they can actually get 7, which I'm not in favor of, but they can actually get 7, and now that's not, that for some reason that doesn't.
Right. Well, that other property, sir, that other property is a dental clinic that by the current ordinances that are not applicable at this moment, but the city has ordinance that says a clinic of that magnitude requires 20 spaces. And so we were concerned on that case because
that's not correct. That's not correct.
Yes. Okay. Well, let's.
It's not correct.
Anyways,
the plan shows it requires 4 parking spaces per treatment room. 4 times 5 is 20.
If it was a clinic.
Right. It is, but it can be operated as a clinic.
That was determined. One of the things that ought to be done is give Mr. Donovan some respect as the chief zoning enforcement officer of the city of.
I have high regard for Mr. Donovan. I have high respect for him.
I
just think he missed this one. I have high respect for him. We talked about how he has a really difficult task with 90,000 people in the city, so many different dwellings and public safety to get after. He just, he just missed this one.
Yeah,
a Hall of Fame baseball player strikes out every now and again. I'm not disrespecting Mr. Donovan. He just struck out in this case.
If I could, Mr. Chairman, then we'll sit down. I'm sorry, Mr. Queenie, but you throw things out there, you try to take legal conclusions and make facts out of them. You are incorrect on the clinic with the parking. You're incorrect on that. And the chairman, I don't know, but you're incorrect on it. The chairman is correct though. You complain on one side, there's not enough parking, and now you complain over here, there's too much.
Okay, can I explain myself? There's a nuance here. Because can I respond to him? Is that all right?
There are 2 sides to every story.
But I want to explain the dental
I know you're passionate about this, but not everybody agrees with your position, unfortunately.
But
you don't take that personally.
I'm not taking it personally, but you've expressed that we're showing a contradiction. I want to explain it to make it look, make you understand how we don't see it as a contradiction.
Well, I do have a problem that you're complaining about them putting 7 cars as opposed to 6 on their property.
But they have enough cars.
And not next to you, it's on the other side.
They have enough cars for the people who live there, enough spaces for the people who live there. The dentist, not this dentist, but the dental practice that the variance now allows, a future owner, the variance goes with the property, the future owner can operate this as a dental clinic, which require 20 spaces. So our concern on the other property.
It's not made up.
It's just made up.
Okay, no, it's not made up. I had zoning ordinance 13.5.1. Says you need 5.
Excuse me.
Excuse me, let's forget about 77 Broad.
Okay, well, they brought it up.
We appreciate, again,
No, I don't
No,
feel
sir, you
heard,
did.
and I'm not feeling heard. To be very
You're being
honest,
heard. Please don't say you're not being heard.
I
We've
said I
read every
don't
single
feel being heard
document
right
that
now.
you have sent to us, that you've sent to the mayor. We've read and we've taken it to heart. I've met personally with the law department 2 or 3 times. You don't respect the time that we've put into this.
Oh, sir, we do.
We have.
I'm sorry if it
You
doesn't
said
feel that
that.
way.
It doesn't feel that way right
Okay,
now.
I understand how it wouldn't feel that way, but we do. We do respect all of you. I've seen you come out to our property, I've seen you
Been
look
there,
around, and I
yeah.
see the hours you spend out here, so but yes, I'm sorry if it...
We have heard you, and I continue to hear you, and I complimented you and said, this is a better project because of you guys.
Yes, and I agree with you. Thank you for that.
And I
The
mean
neighborhood
that.
is a better neighborhood because
of
you
you.
do a great job.
Right. Any further discussion?
No.
Do we have a motion?
Is there any way to remedy this, or it's all for nothing?
We have asked, and we have always been saying, is compel the owner to comply with the variance. You can.
We would like to see is this excess pavement removed. It's pretty clear.
Okay, now, can I respond to that, please?
Variance. Would you please stop interrupting me and allow me to finish? We would
We're both
like,
talking at the same time, so I don't know who's...
we would like, as we had said, for the owner to fully comply with the variance. We're not asking for anything additional than what was presented in that first hearing. And that is what we're asking. Remove the excess pavement, plant the green space that was stated, and then that's a day. But I'm asking that pavement be removed. This is what we agreed with you. We agreed upon. We believed your word. We believed hers when she stipulated. And while she's had all this innuendo that I think is easily to prove, we're not going to go there because we don't go down that road. When they go low, we go high. And we're going to stay high and say, this is what we are asking. We've asked you to compel the owner to comply.
And we can't do that. That's not what we're voting on. All we're voting on is to appealing Mr. Donovan's letter.
Okay.
That's all we're doing, and he can, and he's determined it's in compliance.
Okay, so you have that's one option on the table. You can
That's the only option.
Yeah.
Okay, well, you also can make a vote, and just for matter of record, do you believe the conditions as they currently exist are more substantially detrimental than what was envisioned by this variance?
I'm not voting on anything that I'm not supposed to vote on.
More substantially detrimental.
I would decline that.
Okay.
I think it's a better design.
Just to be clear, on this vote, a vote to a grant would support the appeal. A motion to deny would basically, that would support the city's position and Mike Donovan's position. So I just want to make clear, because this is different. We're not granting
Right.
a variance. This is an appeal of a finding. Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Say that one more time.
A vote to, so there's 2 votes. One would be to support the administrative appeal, and the other would be basically to deny the administrative appeal, which then that actually supports Mr. Donovan and the city's position. So I just want everybody to be clear.
I'm still not clear.
If you want to support the Queenie Gould
Yes.
party,
Right.
you vote.
Yes.
It depends on the motion made.
Yeah, right. That would be a motion to support.
To grant their motion, yeah.
Yeah, and a motion to deny basically supports
Mike Donovan.
the city's position. That's pretty much it. So, is there a motion on the floor?
Motion to deny.
Motion to deny.
Yeah.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Call the roll.
Wait, yeah, it has to be.
Pardon me?
Who's on the case this one?
I was originally on it. I
Yeah.
think we added her because I'm not sure the reason for it.
Well, is
No, I think it's Terry and...
is Richard
son.
on it?
Yes.
Yeah, Rick's on it.
So it's me, Jeannie, Rick.
Yeah, I was already part of the other voting.
You've already, because
Yeah.
we didn't know that. I didn't know
I
that.
didn't know that either. We had the fire.
Did you vote on that?
Yeah, previously would.
Okay.
All right, did Mr. Wooten, you're off then?
Yeah, I didn't vote.
Yeah, would.
Oh, okay, all right. So Terry's on it.
Yeah,
Okay, so there's a motion made
yeah, to deny, and she said.
in a second. So there's a motion made to deny,
Who's second? What?
seconded by Terry.
Okay.
Mr. McElroy? To deny?
Yes, to deny.
Mrs. Krawitz, to deny?
Yes, to deny.
Mr. Wood?
Yes to deny.
Mrs. Curley?
To grant.
So no to
Then you say no.
No.
No to
You say no.
Mr. Cole?
Yes.
Well, thank you all for your time.
Thank you.
It was a different outcome, but thank you very much, and I do appreciate the work you put in. And I'm sorry.
No, that's
But
okay.
I told you before, we get passionate about it, and it sounds like anger, but we're not directed towards you. You've been spending a lot of good attention to this case.
Thank you.
Mr. Donovan,
Great for the city.
Mr. Donovan just struck out. He missed this one. He flubbed this one. He had it hold his position. A Hall of Fame baseball player strikes out every night.
Hey, excuse me, Jeff, can you, we're still in session here? Hey, sorry.
Didn't know that. Honest to God.
That's all right.
God love you.
Mr. Vitale, is there anything you'd like to say on this one?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know you had a long and trying night, so I'll try not to add to that. The last time I was here, you approved a plan that the board worked on at 24 Bruce Place with certain restrictions. And we then took that approval to a builder, and we found that there was even a better way to do it than what you suggested and what we had suggested. And so I submitted for your consideration a plan that shows a smaller footprint, more green space, would agree with the stipulations, which would keep it 2 bedrooms, minimal attic storage space, grass in the front. The plan was prepared for David Potter, who is a builder of homes. I think it's known to the board. And since it's this coming Friday is the final deadline, I wanted to submit this to amend the plan with your permission to build a smaller footprint consistent with the earlier previous conditions that you granted. So the difference would be, the plan we had was, I think, 32 by 44. This is 28 by 44. And the other big difference is that Mr. Potter would build it and make it a condominium, which means ownership by 2 people who could afford to purchase a unit, who might not otherwise be able to afford a home in Lynn. But now, because of the fact that it's going to be, understanding condominium is a form of ownership, and he felt confident that he could construct it consistent with what you desired, and in fact improve upon it by adding less lot coverage and more open space.
Is the height changes?
Excuse me?
The height?
No.
No. No, Dewey?
You can't have a two-family dwelling of more than 35 feet.
No, this is, again, I think that if we were to, I mean, I like the smaller size on the lot. There's much better opportunity for off-street parking. I'm fine, that's good. The only thing I see here is that to do this plan, and again, I know there hasn't any time to do any real elevations or anything, and so the pictures that we're looking at
I specifically asked Mr. Potter about, because I know somebody expressed a concern about the attic space. I read him the stipulation, he understands, he agrees to that stipulation. It's still the same stipulations.
But I'll tell you, we need to, this is my own, I like the smaller space, but I got issues with it only because we're not really seeing what the exterior would look like.
The elevation. It doesn't look like a nice building, a nice looking property.
You're going to dress this up a bit, I hope.
Excuse me?
You're going to dress this up a bit.
Yeah, the question was reducing the size. Mr. Reed, if you look at the date, I think the date of the plan is like today, of the...
So you're saying that the exterior will look exactly like the other plan, but if the interior floor plan
I think that I can get Mr. Potter to give you I know that the elevation doesn't change. I know what he said about the attic space. And in terms of the exterior, I went by what the stipulations were, as I understood them, and they're written on the notice, which was 2 bedrooms, more grass at the front, minimal storage space in the attic.
So that's what will face the street?
Excuse me?
That's what will face the street?
No, I believe that's the rear.
So,
And then just the 2 windows? What is that?
That's the side.
so that will face the street there, or?
I got these from Mr. Potter today at like...
Yeah, I know.
Tell Mr. Porter we don't like this renderings right now. He's not to trust it up.
Yeah.
It's either one side or the other.
No,
right?
I have, yeah. How can we get this, we need some work done. Does it have to be filed Friday?
Extension?
Can we get an extension? Can we vote for an extension? Because, I mean, I have a couple issues that need some, we probably all might want to have some,
Well, that's what was the driving force for me to come
That's
tonight.
fine. The floor plan, the downsizing idea is great. We like that.
Yeah.
But I think it's the appearance. What's it
Something
going to look
in
like?
front has to happen, you know, like a faux entrance or something.
Well, I think the front looks like a side,
Yeah.
and then the side's right here.
21st was.
It's a little odd.
yeah.
You can put like a faux entrance there
Yeah,
or
please
something.
dress it up a little bit. Tell David to dress it up.
I've seen extensions.
Yeah, I think we need to. I don't want to vote on this.
And green space,
He
show,
told me he would have more grass than what was
Show
shown
us.
before.
I'll tell you what, we can, Mary says we can grant an extension.
Yeah.
If you give us some time to look at it.
No, I just didn't want the ship to sail.
No, listen, I'm glad you came in. I'm glad you came in.
We like it because it's smaller.
Right. Just, so give us, so what can we do on the extension?
30 days?
The 17th
Depends what
of,
we want to pull it as, whatever you want it as.
oh, it could wait till March 17th, right?
Oh, yeah, I don't...
Well, let's do it on March 17th.
Yeah, okay.
It's just I was told the deadline was like Friday.
No, we're gonna give you an extension, 30 days, or whatever.
Yeah, 30 days, so.
It's worth it, so.
All right, thank you.
And because it doesn't go through, the new owner would have to come in, and it's
No, that's right.
a 3-month process.
All right. So I'll convey what you said to Mr. Potter, and I'm certain he can comply. As I say, he's got a proven track record in the city of Lynn. And he was the guy that actually came up with the idea for the smaller...
This is good.
Right.
I'm sorry, what?
Is he the new owner, Mr. Potter?
He's the owner in the agreement.
Oh, yeah.
Owner, yes.
That's good, yeah.
What do you want to put on?
We went out to various builders. He looked at it, he suggested it, and then they came to an agreement, and then that's how I got it.
Were you on this case?
whose place? Yeah, this is the one that husband.
Were you on it? You weren't on it?
I was.
Yeah.
I don't know, was it on last week? I wasn't here last week,
Danny was
so.
here
Mr. Wooten was on it, Mr. Wood was on it, Mr. Cole was on it, Mrs. Curley was on it, Mr. Calvin, and Gisona was absent.
How many's
So you
that?
need 2 spots.
Who wants to sit on it? So we need,
We need one more associate.
No, she didn't go.
huh? You were on it?
No, I wasn't.
I was on it.
All right, so we need one between you guys.
Okay, I voted on it.
You decide.
All right, yes.
All right, so we got Florrie.
Okay.
All right, so I need a motion to grant a 30-day extension.
Motion to,
Second.
okay.
We have a motion and seconded. Roll call, please.
Mr. McElroy,
Yes, the extension.
Mr. Wooten,
Yes, to extend.
Mr. Wood,
Yes.
Mrs. Curley.
Yes.
And Mr. Cole.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Motion to adjourn?
So moved.